Chapter 1. Burn marks on the past. The nights were quiet, too quiet sometimes, in the gas station on Route 9. It wasn't a big place, just 4 aisles, a humming cooler of soft drinks, and a coffee machine that wheezed like it had been through a war, the kind of place where people only stopped if they were lost, desperate, or out of cigarettes. Marcus knew the types. He used to be all 3. He'd been working the night shift for 5 months, 6 days a week, 10 hours p.m. to 6 I'd. The hours suited him. Less chatter, fewer eyes, less temptation. That was the thing no one told you about sobriety. The silence could be louder than the addiction. The stillness was dangerous, especially at night. Marcus was 47, or maybe 46. He'd stopped celebrating. Birthdays, sometime around his 3rd rehab stint. He had a room above a diner, a used mattress on the floor, and a folding chair by the window where he sometimes watched headlights sweep the walls. He didn't have much, but he had a routine, and for a man like Marcus, routine was salvation. Every night before work, he brewed a single cup of coffee in his stained French press. He packed a peanut butter sandwich. He folded a note card into his wallet, one with the phone number of his old sponsor written in permanent. Marker. He hadn't called that number in over a year, but he carried it like a lifeline, just in case. At the gas station, Marcus kept things clean, stocked the shelves, wiped the counters twice an hour, whether they needed it or not. Talked little, listened more. He had a soft way of saying, "Have a good night," that made people pause, like they hadn't heard kindness in a while. He never wore his name tag, not because he was hiding, but because Marcus still felt like a name that belonged to someone else, someone who'd burned bridges, burned trust, burned through every chance he was ever given, but lately he'd been trying to rebuild. Some nights he journaled during breaks, scraps of thoughts, one-word entries, still here. Didn't run, breathed. It wasn't poetry, but it was truth, and Marcus was learning to live with the truth. The neighborhood wasn't dangerous exactly, but it had its edges. Kids who hung out by the dumpsters, men who bought liquor and tried not to slur when asking for change. Once, a man tried to rob the place with a screwdriver. Marcus handed over $42 and told him, softly, "This won't help the way you think it will." The man froze, then ran. The cops never caught him. Marcus didn't press charges. He'd seen that look in the mirror too many times. One night, around 2:12 a.m., the door chime rang. Marcus looked up from his crossword. A kid couldn't have been older than 13. Skinny, hoodie 2 sizes too big, sneakers with holes in the soles. Marcus felt his chest tighten. There was something in the way the kid walked. Not casual, not panicked. Calculated, eyes scanning. Not curious, hungry. Marcus watched from behind the counter. The kid moved through. Aisle 2, stopped near the protein bars, pretended to read a label. Marcus knew. He just knew, the way someone who's stolen before knows, the way someone who's run out of options knows. The kid slipped 2 bars into his sleeve, looked toward the exit. Their eyes met, and time, just for a second, stopped. Marcus didn't move, didn't yell, didn't reach for the phone. He just looked at him, and the boy froze. A flash of something flickered in his expression. It wasn't fear, it wasn't guilt, it was something deeper, something Marcus recognized in the pit of his own bones. Shame. The boy turned, ready to bolt, and that's when Marcus did something he hadn't planned. He stood, stepped out from behind the counter and said quietly, "Take 3. They're 2 for $5. The boy blinked. Marcus walked slowly toward him, picked a 3rd bar off the shelf, held it out. The boy didn't move. Marcus placed it gently on top of the others in his hoodie pocket, then pulled out his own wallet, walked to the register, and paid. The boy stood there, stunned, then ran, not out of fear, out of confusion, out of a world that had just shifted without warning. Marcus stood behind the counter, alone again. He placed the receipt in his pocket, wrote one word in his journal that night: saw him. Chapter 2. The Kid with Empty Eyes expanded. The next night, the fluorescent lights inside the station buzzed a little louder. The coffee tasted bitterer than usual, like it had absorbed Marcus's unrest. The chair behind the counter creaked more than it had in months. Though he hadn't moved much, everything was the same, and everything was different. He couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Marcus had handled his fair share of strange situations. During the graveyard shift, drunk customers, petty thieves, broken card machines, even the occasional fight in the parking lot. But nothing had lodged itself into his bones the way that kids' eyes had. They weren't scared. They weren't angry. They were hollow, like someone had reached inside and scooped out the light. He knew that look, knew it like he knew his own name. It was the look of someone who wasn't waiting to be rescued, just waiting. At 10:04 p.m. he clocked in, poured his usual cup of black coffee, didn't taste it. He restocked the gum, recounted the cigarettes in the display, adjusted the cleaning supply shelf. Even though it was fine, he was trying to stay busy, but his mind kept drifting to aisle 2, to the protein bars. The kid hadn't come back. Marcus didn't expect him to, and yet every time the bell above the door rang, every time the glass slid open and cold air swept in, he looked up just in case. He wasn't sure what he'd say if the boy returned, or what he wanted to say. Around 2 a.m., a couple of drunk college kids came in, laughing too loudly and knocking over a display of mints. Marcus cleaned it up without a word. At 2:48, Randy, the retired tow truck driver, showed up. 2 beers, 1 scratch ticket, always the same, but tonight Randy lingered. "You all right, Marcus?" he asked, halfway through scratching the ticket with a quarter. "You're moving like a man who just heard bad news." Marcus gave a soft shrug. "One of those nights," Randy nodded. "Ain't they all?" Then he left. At 3:30 a.m., Marcus stood at the door and looked out at the street. It was dead quiet, just a blinking crosswalk light and the hum of a distant air conditioner. A few rappers skittered across the pavement. He let the door swing closed behind him and leaned against the wall. In the distance, the dumpster behind. The old auto shop sat in shadows. He remembered a night 15 years ago when he'd slept behind one just like it. After a fight, after a binge, after losing his last place. It had rained that night. He woke up soaked, shivering, and so empty he could barely feel his skin. He pulled out his small black notebook, the one he kept in his back pocket, the one that had survived shelters, detox, your jail. He flipped past pages that said things like, "Still here, didn't use, don't trust the quiet," and wrote he wasn't stealing, he was surviving, but even writing it didn't make the weight go away. Around 5 a.m., Marcus sat on a milk crate in the back storage room, sipping the now cold coffee. He stared at the wall. He tried to imagine the boy's life, where he went after he ran, if someone was waiting, if he slept outside, if he'd eaten anything since. His thoughts drifted to his own childhood, to the day his mother left and didn't say goodbye, to the nights he waited for his father to come home sober, to the silence that always followed the yelling, to the feeling that nothing was safe. Maybe that's why the kid's eyes haunted him, because Marcus didn't just see a stranger, he saw himself. When the shift finally ended, Marcus didn't go home right away. Instead, he walked 2 blocks out of his way, past the library, past the 24-hour laundromat, until he reached the alley behind a boarded-up pizzeria, a spot some of the street kids used to crash. He stood there for a long time, listening. Nothing. No one. He walked home in the gray-blue haze of morning. Didn't shower, didn't eat, just sat in his folding chair by the window, knees pulled up to his chest, staring out at the traffic lights. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just walked past someone like that boy, or worse, that no one else would have stopped, that everyone else would have just seen a thief. The journal stayed open on his lap, and sometime around 8:15 a.m., he wrote one more line. "No one saw me back then either." He closed the book, and for the first time in months, he prayed. Not for forgiveness, not for peace, just for the chance to see those eyes again before it was too late. Chapter 3. The decision. The store didn't explode. No alarms rang. No cops showed up at his door. For 24 hours after the incident, everything stayed eerily normal. Marcus clocked in, brewed coffee, restocked the mints. But underneath, the surface, something had shifted, not just in him, but in the way people looked at him. It started with a woman who came in around midnight. She was a regular, worked late at the hospital, always bought the same cranberry juice and bag of pretzels. Normally she smiled, asked how his night was going. Tonight she didn't. She paid in silence, gave a curt nod, walked out without making eye contact. Marcus felt it like a chill across the spine. Something had been said. At 2:17 a.m., his manager showed up, not unusual. Mr. Perry lived nearby and sometimes did random checks. He walked in wearing his windbreaker, clipboard under one arm. "Marcus," he said flatly. Marcus nodded. "Evening. Need to speak with you." Marcus exhaled, already knowing. In the back office, the air felt tighter. The door clicked shut. Perry sat behind the desk, fingers steepled. "I heard what happened 2 nights ago." Marcus didn't respond. Perry continued. "A kid comes in, tries to steal, you let him, and then you pay for his stuff?" Marcus met his gaze. "Yes," Perry blinked. "You know you broke protocol." "I know. You should have called it in, detained him, or at least reported it." "I couldn't," Marcus said. His voice was quiet. "I saw something in him." Perry leaned back. "You saw a thief." Marcus shook his head. "I saw myself." There was a pause. Then Perry scoffed. "That kid could have been armed, could have hit you, could have brought friends back later." "I know. So why risk it?" Marcus thought for a moment. "I don't know. Maybe because someone once gave me a pass when I didn't deserve it. Maybe because if someone had seen me back then, really seen me, I might have gotten clean sooner." Perry tapped his fingers against the desk. "I'm not firing you," he finally said, "but this doesn't happen again. Next time you call me, understood?" Marcus nodded. Understood. Back at the counter, things didn't feel any lighter. Customers came and went. Some stared longer than usual. A teenager with headphones avoided looking at him completely. 2 men in construction jackets whispered by the fridge, glanced his way, then left without buying anything. The judgment wasn't loud, but it was there, in the air and in Marcus's own head. He played the scene over and over again. The pocket, the bar, the eyes, the look of disbelief as he handed the kid a 3rd bar and walked to pay. Was it compassion or was it weakness? He didn't know anymore. That night, he didn't write in his notebook, didn't even open it. He just stared at it, sitting on the table beside his half-eaten sandwich. He wanted to write something brave, something solid, but his hands didn't move. At dawn, walking home, he passed a mural on the side of a boarded-up laundromat. It had faded over the years, but the words were still legible. "Do the right thing even if your voice shakes." Marcus stopped, stared at it. And for the first time that night, something settled in his chest. Not peace, but defiance. He turned his notebook to a fresh page, wrote in bold strokes, "I would do it again." Chapter 4. Backlash expanded. 3 days passed, and still, the boy didn't return, but the stares did, and they didn't go away. Marcus felt them like invisible needles, sharp and cold. Customers who once nodded now passed over their shoulders. A man who used to bring donuts during night deliveries left his box on the counter without a word. He wasn't being yelled at. That would have been easier. This was quieter, crueler. Every night, he came to work hoping it would pass, that someone would mention it so he could explain, that someone would ask. But no one did. because they didn't want answers. They wanted someone to blame. And Marcus had made himself available. On the fourth night, he found a note on the floor behind the counter. It wasn't signed, just a receipt with the words scribbled in black ink. "You're just another junkie making excuses." Marcus stared at it for a long time. Didn't tear it up, didn't throw it out, just folded it once, slid it into his pocket, and went back to work. Later that shift, a customer asked to speak to the manager. She pointed toward Marcus while whispering to another clerk on duty. They spoke in tones too quiet to hear, but he didn't need words to translate. He'd worn that target before. Once it's painted on your back, it never truly fades. At 3 a.m., Marcus went to the back room, sat on a crate of expired soda, put his head in his hands, and for a long time didn't move. The door creaked. Perry, his manager, stepped in. "You all right?" Marcus didn't look up. "You writing me up again?" Perry sighed. "Corporate called." Of course they did. They're saying if another incident happens. Marcus finished for him. "I'm gone." Silence. Perry sat across from him. "You know," he said, voice softer now, "I get what you tried to do. I really do. But these people, they don't care about good intentions. They care about rules." Marcus looked at him. "I spent years living by rules that didn't save me. And one moment of mercy from someone who broke them, that's what." "Oh, did?" Perry didn't respond, just nodded, then left. After his shift, Marcus didn't go home. He walked, no direction, just motion. He passed the old library. The park, where the benches still held blankets from people who never checked out. At the edge of a bridge, he stopped, leant against the cold railing. Below, the city moved, headlights and steam, the occasional siren like a scream underwater. Remembered a night 10 years ago, same bridge, same railing, but back then he hadn't just stopped to think. He'd been one decision away from ending everything, and what pulled him back wasn't a miracle. It was a security guard who offered him a sandwich and said, "No one's too far." It hadn't fixed everything, but it interrupted the fall. That was what he'd tried to do for the kid, interrupt the fall. But now, with the world folding in around him, he wasn't sure it was enough. He sat at the edge of his bed that afternoon, pulled out the receipt with the message, "Read it again. You're just another junkie making excuses." Then opened his journal and wrote under it, "Maybe, but I made the right one." Later that night, just after 1 a.m., 2 officers came into the store. "Routine check," they said. But Marcus could feel it. This was about him. They asked about disturbances, suspicious activity. One of them paused, then added, "Word is, you had a theft last week, handled it unusually." Marcus met his gaze. "I saw a kid who was hungry, I helped." The officer didn't react, just wrote something down. Left without saying another word, Marcus watched them go, then whispered to the air, "I saw him. Why doesn't that count for something?" No one answered, but the silence didn't sting quite as much this time. Maybe because he knew he'd done what most people wouldn't, and even if no one else saw it, he had. Chapter 5. A Second Encounter. The rain came in sheets that night. Heavy, relentless. The kind of rain that made the streets shine like wet glass and turned alleyways into rivers. Marcus had finished his shift early, covering for a sick co-worker. Meant extra hours, but also a headache that pulsed behind his eyes. He decided to take the long way home. He didn't know why. Maybe he hoped the motion would settle something. Maybe he was avoiding the silence waiting in his apartment. Or maybe part of him was still watching every corner, every doorway, every shadow, hoping. He passed the overpass near 6th and Calder, a place where the streetlights flickered and the sidewalk dipped into neglect. Something moved near the dumpster. Figure curled, shivering. Marcus stopped. The shape was small, too small. He took a step closer. The hoodie, the frame, the shoes with torn soles. His heart kicked. "Hey," he said, not loud, not sharp, just present. The figure didn't move. Marcus crouched slowly, staying a few feet back. "It's me. From the store. You remember?" Still no answer. Then, a nod, barely there. He exhaled. "Are you hurt?" Silence. Marcus looked closer. The boy's hands were scraped. His lips split, but more than that. His eyes, still hollow, still lost. But this time, under the flicker of the streetlight, there was something else too. Something that hadn't been there before. Resignation. Marcus moved carefully. "I won't call anyone. I won't ask questions. But you, and can't stay out here, not in this." He opened his coat and stepped back. "I've got a couch. It's not much, but it's warm." For a second, he thought the boy would bolt. But then, the kid slowly stood, didn't speak, just nodded. They walked in silence. Marcus didn't ask his name, didn't push. He'd learned enough from recovery to know you offer the seat, the plate, the moment. The story comes when it wants, or not at all. His apartment was small. Single room, cracked tile, one space heater buzzing near the wall. He handed the boy a towel. A clean hoodie. He made tea, he warmed soup. The kid didn't touch the food at first, just sat on the edge of the couch like if he relaxed he'd disappear. Marcus didn't force him. He just sat at the small table, sipping his own mug, not saying anything. Sometimes presence was the only language people trusted. 20 minutes passed, then the boy spoke. Soft, hoarse. "You gonna turn me in?" Marcus shook his head. "No." Another pause. "You a cop?" A dry chuckle. "No, ex-addict. Ex-lot of things." The boy finally looked at him. "You ain't like the others. I used to be." That hung in the air. Then the boy whispered, "Why'd you help me?" Marcus met his gaze. "Because once, someone helped me. When I didn't think I deserved it." They didn't say much more that night. The boy fell asleep, curled under Marcus's spare blanket, and Marcus sat in the chair by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass like threads of memory. He didn't sleep, he didn't need to, because for the first time in weeks, the silence wasn't empty. It was earned. Chapter 6. Broken Mirrors. The boy didn't say much in the morning. He sat on the edge of the couch, holding the warm mug Marcus handed him like it might slip through his fingers if he breathed too hard. His name, Marcus would later learn, was Eli, but not yet. Right now, he was just the boy. Marcus didn't ask questions. He knew better. Questions were weapons in the wrong hands, even well-meaning ones. So instead, he just talked, softly, casually, like they were two strangers on a long bus ride. "I used to think quiet meant peace," he said. "But when I got sober, I learned that silence can scream louder than anything." The boy didn't respond, but he didn't leave either. That was something. Marcus laid out a clean towel, another hoodie, a pair of old joggers. He made toast. He left the bathroom door cracked so the boy wouldn't feel trapped. Little things. Small signals. "I see you. I won't hurt you. This isn't a trick." Eli finally showered just after noon. Marcus heard the water run. A few minutes later, the boy emerged, cleaner, but still cautious, like someone who knew better than to trust warmth. He sat back on the couch, arms crossed, eyes on the floor. "I didn't mean to get caught," he said suddenly. Marcus looked up from the sink. "I know. I wasn't gonna do it at first. I don't know. My stomach was louder than my head." Marcus nodded. "I've been there." Eli looked at him, skeptical. Marcus held his gaze. "I stole, lied, manipulated. I got good at making people feel sorry for me, even when I didn't deserve it." A pause. "Then one day I woke up in a shelter with blood on my shirt and no idea how it got there." Eli blinked. "Damn." Marcus smiled, small, crooked. "Yeah, that was my rock bottom. I thought I was going to die. But a guy sat next to me, gave me a sandwich and said, 'If you don't quit now, you'll never get the chance again.'" He took a sip of coffee. I didn't believe him, but I ate the sandwich. Eli almost laughed. It was small, but real. They Sat in a soft kind of silence after that, and something shifted, not healed, but cracked. Later that afternoon, Marcus let Eli borrow his phone to call someone. The number didn't go through. Eli handed it back without a word, didn't explain. Marcus didn't ask. Instead, he gave him a deck of old playing cards. They played 3 rounds of war. Eli won all. In 3, Marcus claimed he let him. Eli rolled his eyes, but something in his shoulders relaxed. As night crept in, Eli stared out the window. "You ever feel like there's something broken in you that can't be fixed?" Marcus answered without hesitation. "Every day," Eli turned. "And you're still here?" Marcus nodded. "That's the hard part, staying, especially when it's easier to disappear." Eli didn't say anything, but his eyes glistened in the low light. That night, Marcus laid out the couch again, made tea. Didn't sleep. His thoughts wouldn't stop. The boy's eyes, the way he flinched at sudden noises, the way he barely touched his food unless Marcus looked away. Marcus remembered those behaviors. From himself. From others in recovery. He remembered the bruises that didn't show and the ones that did. At 3 a.m., he scribbled in his journal, "He's me." 10 years younger, 1 wrong turn deeper. He stared at the page, then added, "If I don't help him, who will?" Chapter 7. Crossing the line, 2 days. That's how long Eli had stayed with Marcus. 2 nights on the couch, 3 bowls of soup, 1 borrowed hoodie, no questions, no conditions, and no promises. Marcus told himself it was temporary, that he was just giving the kids space to breathe, to rest, to decide what came next. But deep down, he knew he'd already made a choice, and that choice was beginning to cost him. "Work!" Perry pulled him aside. "You've been distracted," the manager said, arms folded. Marcus nodded. "Not sleeping much." Perry narrowed his eyes. "You got someone staying with you?" Marcus froze. "Why?" "Just heard something. Someone saw a kid with you. Said it looked off." Marcus tried to keep his face neutral. "It's nothing," he said. "Just helping someone out." Perry didn't look convinced. "Be careful, Marcus. You're still on thin ice with corporate. 1 misstep, and that's it." Marcus nodded. Heart pounding. That night he came home to find Eli sitting at the window, hood up, knees pulled tight to his chest. He didn't look up. Marcus closed the door quietly. "You okay?" Eli shrugged. Marcus sat down across from him. "There's been talk," he said, "about you, about me." Eli finally looked at him. "You gonna kick me out?" Marcus stared at the wall, then back at Eli. "No." The boy blinked. "Even if it means trouble?" Marcus nodded. "I've had trouble. I've survived worse. What I couldn't survive was ignoring someone who needed help. Again." Eli didn't speak for a while, then said, barely audible, "I got people looking for me. Not the kind you wanna meet." Marcus felt a cold line draw across his spine. "Do they know where you are?" "I don't think so. You running from something?" "Someone." Marcus didn't ask more. Didn't need to. The room went quiet, but the air was loud. At 3 a.m., Marcus sat at his kitchen table, staring at a form from his parole officer. He was still under supervision. Light now, just check-ins. But harboring a minor? Lying? That wasn't light. That was a violation. He knew the rules, and he was breaking them. He looked at the boy asleep on the couch, his breathing uneven, one hand gripping the blanket like it might vanish. Marcus closed his eyes, tried to imagine calling someone, turning Eli in, but every time he pictured it, he saw his own 14-year-old self being handed off again to someone who called him problem instead of person. He opened his eyes and whispered, "I'm not doing that to you." The next morning, he called in sick. Then he walked to the shelter across town, spoke to the intake counselor, asked hypothetical questions, got real answers, learned what forms to avoid, which agencies would protect, which ones would punish, and then he bought a burner phone, left it on the table with a note. "If you need to go, take this. If you want to stay, say nothing, no pressure. Just choice. When he came home that night, the phone was still there, untouched, and so the line was crossed. Marcus wasn't helping anymore. He was hiding, risking, protecting, not out of guilt, but out of something much older, much harder. Hope. Chapter 8. The Break and the Truth. Expanded. It was a Wednesday morning when everything came undone. Marcus had only stepped out for 30 minutes. Just a supply run. Bread, peanut butter, canned soup, a new pack of socks for Eli. He even grabbed a second-hand book from the shop on 9th, The Outsiders. Something he'd always meant to read. He came back to find the door slightly ajar. Not broken, not kicked in, just open, quietly. The stillness hit him before he crossed the threshold. The apartment was hollow, too hollow. The couch was empty, the borrowed, hoodie gone, the burner phone missing, and his journal and the black one. The one he hadn't gone a day without opening since rehab. It too had vanished. Eli was gone. Marcus stood in the doorway for a long time, grocery bag cutting into his fingers, rain pattering softly outside. He didn't speak, didn't shout. Just set the bag down, walked to the center of the room, and sat on the floor. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It was something worse, abandonment. It was like his body remembered something before his mind did, that this wasn't the first time someone left without warning. Wasn't the first time. Someone vanished just as he'd started to believe in them. He had felt this before, a long time ago. Age 10. The day his mother packed a suitcase while he was at school and never came back. No note, no goodbye, just her scent on the pillow. And silence in the kitchen. Marcus curled his knees into his chest, pressed his forehead to them, and sat there in the dim apartment for what felt like hours. Eventually, he stood, moved robotically, checked the fridge, the trash, the window ledge. He paced, then grabbed his coat and went back into the rain. The next 7 hours were a blur. He checked shelters, walked through every alley between 4th and Tremont. Stopped at the skate park, the corner store, even the back of the library. No sign, he asked. 2 kids, if they'd seen someone matching Eli's description. They shook their heads. One of them said, "You sure it's not just another runaway?" Marcus didn't respond. He just kept moving. By 9 p.m., soaked to the bone, he returned to the apartment. The silence met him like a punch. He dropped his coat, peeled off his shirt, and sat at the table with the lights off. Didn't eat, didn't drink, just sat, and then it came. The wave, the one he'd held off for weeks. It crashed hard, tears, sobs, the kind that choke. He didn't try to stop them, didn't even wipe his face. He cried until his throat burned and his chest ached, then collapsed into the couch. Didn't move, didn't sleep, just drifted into something like unconsciousness. When he woke, the world was quiet again. Light filtered in gray through the window, and there on the table, the journal and the phone. Marcus sat up fast. His heart kicked hard. He reached for the journal, flipped it open. A note was folded inside, written on the back of a receipt. The writing was messy, but familiar. Didn't steal, didn't lie, just panicked. "I'm not good at safe. I'm better at breaking things. You were kind, too kind. I didn't know what to do with that. The phone helped. I'm okay. I'll be back. Just had to see if you were real. E." Marcus stared at the words, then folded the note carefully and placed it back in the journal. His hands were shaking, but his chest felt lighter than it had in days. Eli came back that night. Didn't knock, didn't say a word when he walked in. Just dropped his backpack near the door and sat on the couch. Marcus didn't ask where he'd gone, didn't need to. He handed Eli a sandwich. Eli took it. After the first few bites, he said, "I saw my brother." Marcus blinked. "And?" Eli's eyes were sharp, sad. "He's not someone I want to be." No more words were needed. Later, as the rain started again, Marcus opened his journal and wrote, "He ran, not because I failed, but because I mattered." And that scared him. Chapter 9. A choice with no applause, expanded. It happened on a Thursday. The knock on the door was quiet but deliberate. 3 taps. A pause, then one more. Not urgent, not violent, just inevitable. Marcus wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened the door. Standing outside were 2 people, one in a jacket that read Department of Youth Services. The other, to Marcus's surprise, was Perry, his manager, his parole contact, his watchdog. "Mr. Monroe?" the woman asked. She was in her 40s, well-dressed, eyes too tired to fake kindness. "I'm Carla. We received a call about a minor possibly residing with you." Marcus swallowed. Perry shifted awkwardly beside her. "I didn't say anything specific," he muttered. "Just raised a concern." Marcus stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in." Eli was in the corner of the room, headphones around his neck, sketching something into Marcus's old phone book. When he looked up and saw the badge, the pencil slipped from his fingers. He stood, frozen like prey. Marcus raised a hand. "It's okay." But it wasn't, and they all knew it. Carla asked questions. How long had Eli been here? Why hadn't Marcus notified the proper channels? Did he understand the legal risks of housing a minor without guardianship? Yes. No. Yes. She asked Eli about his home situation. He didn't answer at first. Then, in a whisper, "There is no home." She wrote something down, asked if he felt safe. He hesitated, then nodded. She kept writing. They didn't raise their voices, they didn't make threats, but the subtext was clear. This isn't allowed. This kindness isn't on our forms. Marcus sat forward. "I'll sign for him." Carla paused. "Excuse me. I want to take guardianship. Temporary, emergency, whatever I need to do. You're on parole. Clean for 26 months. Do you have income? Yes. Space? Yes. Experience with minors? I was one, broken, alone, just like him, and someone took a chance on me." Carla narrowed her eyes. "You know this won't be easy." "I don't need easy," Marcus said. "I just need real." They took Eli that night, not in cuffs, not in shame, just in silence. Before leaving, he looked back. His face didn't change, but his hands clenched the straps of his backpack like lifelines. Marcus nodded once. "I'm not done," he whispered. Eli said nothing, but something in his shoulders softened. What followed was chaos. Marcus met with legal aid, called his sponsor, called 2 old friends from the shelter, one now a pastor, one a counselor, asked them for letters, filed forms, endured interviews, sat through background checks that scraped every corner of his past. The state didn't want to say yes, but they couldn't say no. Not when everything came back clean. Not when his parole officer, Perry of all people, vouched for him. Not when Eli, in a quiet meeting at a group home, told Carla, "He saw me." It took 17 days. No parades, no cameras, just a man signing papers at a city office on a rainy afternoon. When he stepped outside, Eli was waiting on the steps, hood up, backpack at his feet. No smile, just presence. Marcus stood there, stunned. "You came back." Eli looked up. "You stayed." They walked home in silence, but every step said what their words didn't know how to. That night, Marcus made chili. Eli added too much salt. They laughed. It stuck. Later, while Eli slept on the couch, still refusing. The bed. Marcus opened his journal, wrote in slow, even strokes. "They told me it wasn't my responsibility. They said I didn't owe him anything, but I know what it feels like to be left behind. So I made the choice. Not for applause, not for credit, just so he'd never have to wonder if anyone would stay." Chapter 10. The Boy Who Didn't Steal Again. It was 3 years later. Marcus stood behind the counter of a new place. Not a gas station, but a community-run corner store. Locally owned, stocked by volunteers, prices based on honesty. People said it wouldn't work, but it did, because Marcus wasn't running it alone. A chime rang at the door, and in walked a boy. No, a young man now, tall, lean, hoodie clean, shoes tied tight. Eli. Not the same Eli who flinched at footsteps or slept with one eye open. This one moved like someone who knew where he was going. He dropped a stack of flyers on the counter. "Printing's done," he said. "Hung most of them already." Marcus looked down at the title, "Starting Fresh, Peer Mentorship for At-Risk Youth." He smiled. "You spell mentorship right this time?" Eli smirked. "Better double-check, old man." They shared a laugh. Easy, earned. The kind that only comes from pain passed through. Later that evening, they sat outside the shop, watching the sun dip behind the old church. Marcus sipped tea. Eli munched a granola bar. Neither spoke for a while. Then Eli said, "You know, I haven't stolen anything since that day." Marcus looked over. "Which day?" Eli shrugged. "You know the one?" Marcus nodded. "Why?" he asked softly. Eli paused. Then almost without emotion, "Because you gave me something I didn't have to steal." The words hit harder than any applause, more than any medal, because they were real and quiet and true. Marcus remembered a time when he thought people like him didn't get second chances, that some lives were just meant to burn out. But that wasn't true. Not for him, not for Eli, not for anyone who got seen, really seen, at the right moment. 2 weeks later, they hosted their first mentorship session. 7 boys showed up. One didn't talk at all. One tried to steal a pack of gum on the way out. Eli saw it happen, stopped him gently, didn't scold, just placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "You don't have to do that here." The boy blinked, then nodded and put the gum back. Marcus watched from a distance, didn't interfere, just smiled, because that was it. That was the moment, the full circle, the seed becoming a tree. That night, as they locked up, Marcus handed Eli his old journal. "The whole thing?" Eli asked. Marcus nodded. "It's yours now." Eli flipped through it, saw pages stained by years, scribbles, prayers, rage, hope. At the very end, the last page was blank. He looked up. "You left it empty," Marcus smiled, "because it's your turn to write the rest." And so he did. Some choices echo louder when no one is watching. No camera, no reward, just a man choosing to stay. Marcus didn't save Eli with speeches or slogans. He saved him with presence, by seeing the boy no one else wanted to look at, by crossing a line that made him vulnerable. Not to break the law, but to break the cycle. And Eli? He didn't become perfect. He became whole, because someone once gave him something he didn't have to steal. If this story touched you, comment below. What's one quiet decision that changed your life forever? And share this video with someone who believes second chances are real, even when the world doesn't.